It must be hard to watch American TV without MASH, right? That since the show wasn't just popular, it changed what a comedy could be. Starting in 1972, in the last few years of the Vietnam War, MASH star took place during the Korean War and had both funny and sad parts. It's strange the figures looked at how silly war is and how strong the human spirit is. It became quickly a fan favorite. But behind the scenes, the show was always changing. As it went further into with its social comments and complicated character arcs, the show sometimes got tense. Several well-known stars in the end, they made the hard decision to leave. Why did they leave? Was it for personal or business reasons? Conflict for creativity? It might surprise you why. Let us look more closely at what took place. This is a war story with heart. There's a lot to talk about, but let's go back in time and see how this famous show came to be before we get into it. Like a lot of other great TV shows, MASH's story starts in a book instead of on TV. In 1968, Dr. Richard Hooker, who was actually a pen name for Korean War specialist MASH, a novel about 3 army doctors was written by Richard Hornberger. The book was a made-up story about his time as a doctor in a mobile army hospital during the Korean War. And because it has both dark humor and moments of warmth and bitter truth, the book quickly became a hit, which caught the attention of Hollywood. 2 years after the book came out, director Robert Altman turned it into a movie. That turned into the satirical black comedy MASH, which was both funny and serious. The Don Sutherland played Hawkeye Pierce in the movie, and Elliot Gould played Trapper John. And people were moved by it, especially since the Vietnam War was still a big deal in the United States. Being aware. The movie quickly won praise from critics and audiences alike. And it won the Palme d'Or at the Eye, won an Oscar for Best Screenplay and something at Cannes. But the real jump in culture happened 2 years later. CBS turned the idea into a weekly TV show. The TV version of MASH, which was created by Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, premiered on September 17, 1972. It kept the battle setting and strange plot, but changed the style to be more episodic and character-driven, which made it possible for deeper, more intense stories. Eagle Eye Pierce was played by Alan Alda, and quickly turned into the show's heart. Even though the first season had such low numbers that CBS almost cancelled it, but decided to take a chance and move it to Saturday nights. It got a lot of viewers after this move. What the show did to culture also changed. A lot of people thought the show also broke the rules. It was Hollywood's first movie of its kind, playing around with format and real war video, and was even one of the first American comedies that used chopper noise instead of a laugh track all the time. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye, went on to direct, write, and produce movies. The show's creator and driving force behind making it more realistic and emotional. But MASH's characters grew up, and let's just say that not all the players agreed with that. The new path. For some, their roles were getting smaller or they were being made fun of. Others were having problems in their personal lives or wanted to try new artistic paths. MASH had a lot of cast changes over the course of its 11 seasons, but no matter what, it stayed true to its one goal, to show how expensive war is by thinking about kindness, wit, and strong ties between people. So, let's get right to it. The first big actor to leave the show, whose departure came as a surprise, his character was killed off in a way that shocked the whole country. If you ask longtime MASH fans what scene from Season 3's end, Abyssinia, hit them the hardest, it's likely that they'll bring up that one. It was only one line, said softly by Radar, but it changed everything. Lieutenant, over the Sea of Japan, someone shot down Colonel Henry Blake's plane. No one made it out alive. Not just because it shocked people, that moment was new. But because it was the first time a main cast member from MASH, McLean Stevenson, left in a big way. How did we get there, though? McLean had been an important part of MASH from the start. Being the friendly but sometimes confused captain of the 4077th, his role, Colonel Henry Blake, was a great contrast to how crazy war is. Where Hawkeye was entrapper brought defiance and wit, Henry Blake brought humanity, even when it was jumbled. They are sometimes confused but always mean well. In the first few seasons, McLean's play got him a lot of applause and a Golden Globe. He was funny, easy to relate to, and fans loved them very much. Things weren't quite as peaceful behind the scenes, though. According to interviews and autobiographies of the actors and writers, McLean became more and more angry with his part. The show began as a loose group comedy, but it quickly turned into a centered around Hawkeye Pierce played by Alan Alda. And as Alda worked on the writing more, both direction of the show, his character became more important to the story and to how it was told. McLean, on the other hand, felt left out. So far behind the times that he told People magazine in 1995, he said, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy who drags the show." However, this wasn't about McLean's ego, even though it sounds like it would be. See, McLean really wanted to be a star, he had big goals. But if I may say one thing you should know about Hollywood is that it's very simple for an actor to become a conventional part. What about McLean? He was falling into a hole he didn't want to be in. He saw how strong TV could be and thought he had the charm and skills to make it happen. Bring his own show to the air. He wanted to look for chances where he wouldn't have to. The third or second banana. Getting ahead was important to him. At the end of season 3, McLean went up to the producers that he would not be coming back. This is where things changed. In the past, when stars quit sitcoms, it's possible that their figures were sent, moved, transferred, or even written off. Going to get married. MASH wasn't a typical show, though. Larry and Gene, who made it, saw a chance to do something brave. They wanted people to remember that MASH was, at its core, a story about war. That some people don't make it home from war. And now was the right time to do it. The famous Abyssinia, Henry episode came after this one. In the show, Henry Blake gets his orders to leave the military and gets ready to go home. There is partying, there were tears, hugs, and a happy goodbye. It seems like a happy finish for 25 minutes. The last scene, on the other hand, comes like a storm. Radar walks into the operation room with his hat on and a serious look on his face. They are in the middle of surgery. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan, he tells them. There were no survivors. There was a long, tense pause that could have been heard all over America. There is no scary music, a laugh track, or chopper noises. Just shocked looks on faces and the beep of surgery tools. That scene changed the way TV shows are made. It was one of the first times a TV character that people loved was killed off for good. Without any notice. This was partly true because only a few people in the group knew the ending before the end. Later, Alda said that Gary Berghoff, who plays Radar, was the only player she told ahead of time so he could get ready. In that last take, the rest of the group was acting honestly. People responded strongly and right away to the show as soon as it aired. CBS got a lot of letters. Some were happy with how honest the show was, while others were mad that so quickly, a popular character was taken away. Some people even said the makers went too far. So far. Larry said, "We wanted to say that not everyone gets to go home," to explain the choice. That's what they did. What happened to McLean after he left, though? Things weren't as great as he probably thought they would be. Sure, things were at first. It looked pretty good. He signed a good deal with NBC because he was eager to go it alone. He became the star of the McLean Stevenson Show, a family show built around his friendly personality. It looked like he was making his own rules and making a name for himself in the business. But it didn't last long. After only one season and a second try, his show was dropped. With the show Hello, Larry did even worse. Even with high hopes and a lot of advertising, reviewers didn't like the show, and it became a running joke over time. McLean would come to regret leaving MASH in the end. In an interview in 1983, he told the Los Angeles Times, "I took myself out of the game." It wasn't just that his new shows didn't do well, it was more that he realized MASH was a one-time hit. Event of a lifetime. It was like lightning in a bottle in terms of the company, the writing, and the mood. Some of his co-stars, like Alda and Loretta Swit, were sad that he was leaving. But they also knew he wanted to try new things. Some people softly wondered if he had been too quick to leave something wonderful behind. Even though he felt bad about it, McLean kept working in TV shows and sometimes made guest turns on other shows. He never did, though, find the same level of success or making an emotional link with the audience, like when he played Henry Blake. When he died in 1996 at the age of 68, friends sent him a lot of tributes. His friends and co-workers, with Alda calling him a wonderful actor and a good man, and Gary said of him, a joyful spirit who made everyone around him happy. No matter what you think of McLean, his leaving helped the show in a way. Soul. That's the irony. He may have left to get his big break, but the part he played away from was the most important part of his work. But if you thought McLean's leaving was a shock, Wayne Rogers's departure from MASH was not scary at all. It was quiet, complex, and a lot of drama going on behind the scenes. Wayne Rogers, while McLean got a very sad show and a moment that went down in TV history, Wayne Rogers just stopped being there. He was in one show and the next, he was not there. There was no goodbye, no explanation, and no end to the story. You may ask why. Let's just say that things on set don't always look as good as they do in the movies. We need to start at the beginning to understand what happened. Rogers played Wayne. Catcher John McIntyre was one half of the original comedy duo that made MASH famous. The early seasons. He and Alda's Hawkeye Pierce were the 14th century's lifeblood. A lot of people loved how well the two of them got along. Even more so when they chose to include their quick wit, mischief, and unbreakable relationship. It was like watching The Odd Couple during the war, but with jokes about scalpels. Even though they were laughing, anxiety was building behind the scenes. It turned out that Wayne had agreed to be in MASH because he thought it would be a real group show, with the main cast getting equal screen time. But as the show went on, a lot of the attention began to change toward Alda's side. It was clear right away that Hawkeye was more than just as a co-lead, he was now the show's moral heart and emotional anchor. Soon after, Alda, who was a talented writer and director, began to play a big role in shaping the show's creative direction. Things began to look very different. At first, Wayne didn't mind that Alda was doing well. On the contrary, they were said to be friendly offset, but he soon started to feel taken aback. It looked like Alda's figure was the only one growing up. Those they just showed up stuck in their cocoons. Anyway, Trapper John was gone from going from being the main figure to a supporting one. Also, Wayne later said in interviews, it wasn't about pride, it was about telling the truth in stories. He said once, Trapper didn't have many things to do. He was one of two friends at first, but then he turned into the guy who agreed with everything Alan said. But unlike McLean, who made a leave and was sent off, but Wayne went in a different direction. Without a fuss and in silence, after season 3, he chose not to keep his job. The makers had no idea. He wasn't seen again until just before shooting for season 4 started. Things get even stranger from here on out. Wayne's deal with the show was never officially signed. In other words, he had been working on a deal with a handshake the whole time. In other words, when the producers said they would sue him for breach of contract, but they couldn't because he wasn't breaking the contract. They hadn't broken anything. He had simply left a show that he no longer thought was good, letting his character develop. His leaving was sudden, and it left the writers are stumbling. Because of this, they had to change how season 4 began. In the first episode, it was shown that Trapper John had been released while Hawkeye was on leave. The audience's response was very harsh. Henry came first, and now Trapper? Was this really happening? It was even worse that there was no goodbye scene for him. No party at the hospital, and most importantly, there was no goodbye from the heart. Since the makers are trying hard to hurt Wayne was taken out of charge by Mike Farrell as B.J. Honeycutt, a figure who was meant to be more stable, mentally complicated, and maybe not as rebellious as Trapper. The show's mood changed right away when this happened. The Edge and In was a buddy comedy, and In was a softer, more introspective form of the show. It's funny, though, because MASH got deeper and maybe even better without Trapper. Many people still say they like the older seasons better, but we think the opposite is true. While this was going on, Wayne didn't disappear from view. After MASH, he was in movies and TV shows, but in the end he went in a completely different direction and became a skilled investor and commentator on the stock market. Wayne knew a lot. Very smart. He studied history at Princeton and then worked as a lawyer on Wall Street. In fact, by the 1990s, he talked about economics and politics on Fox News' Cash-In show on a regular basis. He got a lot of money, not from playing, but from smart money moves. That being said, he never really left Los Angeles. He was in a few TV movies and had a few recurring parts. He even made fun of talks afterward about his time on MASH. Even though he left quickly, there didn't seem to be any bad blood between him and the group that will last. Alda even said, Wayne is one of they are the smartest people I've ever worked with. That friendship stayed strong. I missed him a lot when he left. And when Wayne died in 2015 in a tweet at age 82, Alda said, he was smart, funny, curious, and dedicated. We agreed to please be mean to each other for the rest of our lives. I'm sorry we won't get to do that. Even though Wayne quit MASH when it was at its most famous, there was no big deal or cheers. Fans still remember Trapper with love because they loved his silly grin and laid-back personality. We've talked a lot about how all of these stars left to go their separate ways. But what about those who quit because the show made them feel so badly? Gary Berghoff. It's funny, because he was the team's heart, but Gary Berghoff didn't leave MASH with a lot of fuss or happy event. He left in a quiet, sad way, and for reasons that most people will never fully understand. Fans knew Gary as Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed office worker with a strange sense of what was going on. With a war in one arm and a stuffed bear in the other. Drones could be heard before anyone else by Radar. Something else. He was sweet and innocent, almost like a child, which made the battlefield less unpleasant. Hawkeye and Trapper broke the rules, and Henry Blake was bad at being a boss. Radar was the thing that held everything together, some might even say it moved people emotionally. The 477th. But behind that soft voice and nervous smile was an actress who was slowly falling apart from the stress of it all. Only Gary played the same part in this movie as he did in the original 1970s MASH movie. By doing this, he made Radar more vulnerable in a way that wasn't there in the movie. The movie Radar in this version was more naughty and even a little sleazy. But on TV, Gary made Radar into a memorable thing that stands for lost youth during the war. In fact, his performance was so famous that many people thought he could never be replaced. However, by season 7, there were cracks in the wall. Gary was having problems with himself and professionally. The long hours needed to make MASH and his own desire to be great got old on him. He dealt with anxiety and sadness for a long time, which didn't happen very often. It made news at the time, but it really hurt his ability to handle the stress of filming. The pain of being away from his family was another thing. Gary was married and had a young girl by the late 1970s. But the long days on set made him tired. Was away from home all the time, and he eventually admitted that he missed his daughter's early years. Felt like a mistake I never stopped regretting, as co-star Mike said in an interview for 2018. Farrell remembered, Gary had problems with his feelings. That he was never getting enough attention or the praise he deserved. But I think he didn't realize how much we all admired him. Gary wanted more money, which led to disagreements over the terms of the deal. He needed more freedom and less time in front of a screen so he could handle his daily life. Who made it? Because they knew how important Radar was to the show, they did their best to make him feel at home. At one point, Gary was given even more time off and less work to do each season. He thought it wasn't enough, though. He was done with how he felt. So, in season 8, he had to make the tough choice to quit MASH for good. But unlike Wayne, this time the show didn't let him go without a trace. Radar got 2 parts. One of the saddest stories in the series was told in the last show, called Goodbye, Radar. In it, Radar comes back from vacation to find the 4-7 sinking apart while he's not there. Like always, he tries to fix everything at first. He feels bad about leaving, but he knows it's time to move on. He needs to go home to his mother, the farm where he lives is in trouble. And maybe Radar is finally an adult now.